Welcome to DD History, where we try to tell compelling stories of the past. We hope you enjoy and join us for more videos in the future. When we last left Athens, things were going, let's just say, not according to plan. What was supposed to be a grand and glorious conquest of Sicily had turned into one giant headache. Remember, the Athenians launched the biggest military expedition in their history. Hundreds of ships, tens of thousands of men, enough supplies to feed a small country, and sailed across the sea expecting an easy victory. Instead, their ambitious leader Alcibiades bailed, defected to Sparta, and spilled all their secrets. Their experienced general Lamachus died in battle. That left Nicias, who had been against the whole mission from the start, trying to command an expedition he didn't believe in. And it only got worse. Syracuse, the target city, fought back hard. Reinforcements arrived from Sparta under the general Gylippus, who whipped Syracuse's defenses into shape. Athens found itself trapped in a drawn-out siege, facing naval defeats, plague, crumbling morale, and a war effort that was bleeding resources faster than it could be replaced. By now, the dream of conquest was dead. The question wasn't, can Athens win? It was, can they even get out alive? This final episode is where it all comes crashing down. We'll follow the Athenians through their desperate attempt to retreat, the destruction of their once mighty fleet, and the brutal fate that awaited Nicias, Demosthenes, and the survivors. It's one of the darkest chapters in ancient history, a cautionary tale of overconfidence, poor leadership, and how even the strongest empires can stumble into disaster. So buckle in. The story of Athens and Syracuse is about to reach its tragic end. By 414 BCE, the optimism that had fueled Athens' Sicilian adventure was gone. The once proud fleet that had left Piraeus to cheers and celebration was now bogged down in endless fighting, bleeding manpower, and morale sinking faster than a trireme with holes in its hull. The Syracusans, led by the Spartan general Gylippus, had turned the tide. Gylippus wasn't flashy, but he was steady and knew how to exploit Athenian mistakes. He rallied Syracuse's soldiers, built counter-walls to block Athenian attempts to surround the city, and forced Athens into a grinding stalemate. And then came the worst news possible. Reinforcements weren't on the way for Syracuse alone. Athens, too, had doubled down. Against all reason, the Athenian assembly voted to send even more troops. A second wave under Demosthenes, yes, the same general who had led that wild ambush at Pylos earlier in the war, was dispatched with 73 triremes and thousands of fresh soldiers. From the outside, this looked like Athens was about to turn the tables. But here's the catch. The longer the siege dragged on, the weaker Athens became. Maintaining such a massive force far from home drained the city's treasury, while their enemies back in Greece, Sparta, Corinth, and Thebes were licking their lips at the thought of an overextended Athens. Still, for a brief moment, hope flickered. When Demosthenes arrived in 413 BCE, he brought boldness Nicias sorely lacked. He launched a daring night assault on the Syracusan fortifications, hoping to smash through before the defenders could react. For a few chaotic minutes, it worked. The Athenians surged forward, Syracusans panicked, and victory seemed within reach. But night battles are notoriously unpredictable. Confusion spread, soldiers stumbled in the dark, friend and foe were indistinguishable. The Syracusans regrouped, counterattacked, and the Athenians were thrown into chaos. Demosthenes' gamble collapsed, leaving thousands dead or wounded. The Athenian army, once the pride of Greece, was now demoralized, disease-ridden, and trapped in hostile territory. After that disaster, Demosthenes took one look at the army's condition and said what everyone was thinking. We need to leave, right now. Nicias, however, hesitated. Always cautious, always waiting, he worried that retreat would make him look weak back home. He argued that abandoning the siege without orders from Athens would be political suicide. So instead of acting decisively, he stalled. And that's when the gods, or perhaps just really bad luck, delivered the knockout punch. A lunar eclipse lit up the night sky. For Nicias, a deeply superstitious man, this was no mere astronomical event. It was an omen. The priests advised waiting 27 days before sailing, a delay that doomed the Athenians. While they lingered, the Syracusans prepared to strike. The Syracusans knew the Athenian fleet was their greatest threat, so they focused on crippling it once and for all. They reinforced their harbor with chains and ships, narrowing the exits and forcing Athens to fight on unfavorable terms. When the Athenians finally tried to break out, the result was chaos. The great Athenian fleet, which had once dominated the seas, found itself trapped in a narrow harbor, unable to maneuver. Syracusan ships slammed into them, rams splintered hulls, and crews fought hand-to-hand as ships locked together. Imagine hundreds of triremes colliding like bumper cars made of oak and bronze, only with thousands of lives at stake. The noise alone would have been deafening: crashing wood, screaming men, the crack of oars, the clash of shields. In the end, the Athenians were crushed. Ship after ship was destroyed or captured. The survivors, exhausted and demoralized, staggered back to shore. Their fleet, the pride of Athens, was gone. With no ships left, there was only one option: escape on foot. Nicias and Demosthenes gathered the remnants of their army, tens of thousands of men, hungry, sick, and terrified, and marched inland, hoping to find safety. But the Syracusans weren't about to let them go. They harried the Athenians at every step, cutting off supplies, blocking roads, ambushing stragglers. It was a nightmare retreat, one of the most infamous in ancient history. The once mighty army of Athens was now a starving, broken mob, pursued relentlessly by an enemy that smelled blood. And hey, before we keep trudging with the Athenians on this nightmare hike, this is a perfect time for you to do something way easier. Hit that like button and subscribe to DD History. Trust me, it takes way less effort than rowing a trireme or running from Syracusans. Plus, it helps us keep making these epic stories from history without the disease, hunger, or arrows flying at our heads. All right, back to the Athenians, who unfortunately don't get to take a break. So Nicias and Demosthenes lead what's left of the Athenian army away from the battlefield. At first, the retreat is organized. Rows of soldiers, wounded carried along, shields up, all hoping to reach friendly territory. But soon, discipline cracks. The men are starving. They've been cut off from supplies for weeks. Thirst drives them to swamp water. Exhaustion makes them stumble. What had once been the greatest fleet in Athens' history now looks like a ragged caravan of the desperate. Syracusan cavalry harasses them constantly, riding just close enough to throw spears, then retreating. Every step the Athenians take is under pressure, like walking through an endless gauntlet. And here's where the myth of Athenian invincibility truly collapses. This wasn't just a lost battle, it was the slow, grinding destruction of an entire army in full view of the Greek world. Eventually, the Athenians reached the River Assinarus. You'd think, water, salvation. But no, it's a death trap. The men rush forward, pushing each other into the river, drinking greedily even as arrows and javelins rain down. Some drown in the chaos. Others are cut down as they bend to drink. Imagine thousands of soldiers, exhausted, bloody, desperate, crushed together in panic while the Syracusans close in. It's one of the darkest scenes in all of ancient history. Nicias, knowing it's over, surrenders to save what few lives he can. Demosthenes has already been captured, and with that, the Athenian dream of Sicily dies in the mud and blood of the Assinarus. The survivors? They're marched back to Syracuse in chains, and their fate is grim. Some are executed. Many more are thrown into the Syracusan quarries, deep stone pits where they're left exposed to the sun by day, freezing at night, Packed so tightly, disease spreads like wildfire. Few ever make it home. Athens had sent its largest, grandest, most expensive expedition in history, and it ended not with victory parades, but with silence, misery, and ruin. News of the disaster reaches Athens slowly, then all at once. The city is stunned. Families wait for ships that never return. The treasury is empty. The navy, once the pride of Athens, is shattered. Thucydides, our trusty historian, doesn't exaggerate here. He says flat out, this was the greatest disaster Athens ever suffered. And he's right. The Sicilian expedition didn't just fail. It broke Athens' confidence, drained its strength, and handed Sparta the momentum in the Peloponnesian War. It's a turning point. From here on, Athens is fighting not to win, but just to survive. So what's the lesson? Maybe don't start a massive overseas conquest in the middle of a war you're already struggling with. Or maybe, don't ignore the cautious guy in the room who keeps saying, "This is a bad idea." Sorry, Nicias, you were right. Athens reached for glory and instead grabbed disaster. And history remembers the Sicilian expedition not as a tale of empire, but as a warning about ambition, arrogance, and the terrible cost of ignoring reality. And that's the story of Athens versus Syracuse, the grand gamble that ended in absolute catastrophe. If you liked this video, be sure to subscribe to DD History for more epic stories of the past. From myths to real battles, we'll keep bringing history to life without making you march through Sicily to hear it.